Right, as always, let's make sense of what's taking place in the US and perhaps implications for us here in Africa. And for that, we bring in SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena with us once again in studio. And it seems as the hours tick by, anticipation is mounting, especially because the polls aren't calling it just yet. Nonetheless, the latest information is that both candidates have now wrapped up their closing campaign speeches. Trump was in Michigan and Kamala Harris was, of course, in Pennsylvania. Both states crucial in this election.
Yes, indeed, very crucial. And it is for that reason that they chose those two important states. You know that Kamala is struggling in Pennsylvania, and therefore she decided to go there for the final push. You saw Winfrey there supporting her and trying to get those voters in that state to ensure that they support Kamala Harris. You have also, on the other hand, Donald Trump going to Michigan. Michigan, very critical, as this is the state where you also have quite a number of minorities in terms of different perspectives, and therefore he wanted to ensure that he does get the votes in Michigan. You know that the issue there in Michigan is that you have a number of people who are having interest in what's happening in the Middle East, and therefore pushing to ensure that you get those votes, because you know that based on how the Biden administration handled the Middle East, a number of people in Michigan are not happy. And I think much as Donald Trump is more conservative and people have issues with him and a populist and all of that, but with elections, one issue can be a deciding factor.
Absolutely. And you speak about the situation in the Middle East, and a conversation I had with an analyst in California earlier was around whether or not those who are compassionate with the Palestinian plight actually have a candidate in this election. Kamala Harris had an opportunity to speak more strongly, I suppose, against what is taking place there. She wasn't, in fact, emphatic about, for example, Israel's advancement on the besieged Strip. And Donald Trump apparently is, in fact, doubling down, was even more extreme in his rhetoric around what should happen there.
Even sending a message to the Prime Minister of Israel a few days ago that if he is able to win this election, by the time he gets into office next year, that matter must be resolved, or perhaps there should be peace. And therefore, that speaks to perhaps trying to appeal to those voters. On the other hand, Kamala Harris speaking powerful words in terms of a need for peace, need for two-state solution, something that has been said many times, but it's not happening, and therefore very, very dancing because of the support for Israel and what they have done previously, giving Israel resources, and also, you know, that Israel purchasing arms in the United States of America under this administration. And therefore, she is in a fix.
Sure. There comes a stage in every election where you have to kind of let it go and wait. And I think that's certainly where we are, at least insofar as campaigning is concerned. And I suppose with that also comes an opportunity for us to really take stock of what has dominated the rhetoric of these campaigns. I mean, there have been issues, for example, with identity politics, Kamala's race coming into the, into sharp focus at some stage. There had been questions around the economy, immigration, Roe v. Wade, to do with reproductive rights. How would you characterize what's kind of stood out the most over the past few weeks?
You are correct. There were lots of controversies, including the assassination attempt on Trump, right, almost twice. On the other hand, we have Kamala Harris coming late into the race, and therefore it will be a photo finish if she does grab it. And therefore, it has been very difficult for Americans. But as you pointed out, on issues, when you look at people deciding on issue-based, you look at the issue of economy, you look at reproductive rights, you look at security of the United States of America, you look at issues of migration and the immigration laws in that country, you look at issues that are related to energy supply in the United States of America, whether you still continue using coal and gradually going clean, or you power ahead with clean energy, you do away with fossil fuel. Those are the issues that are high on the agenda of the Americans, and the implication in terms of a decision taken on this issue or that issue. That would include in terms of the middle class, much as it is a small group. They are quite squeezed, and therefore, who is going to help us in this crisis? As you know, that since COVID-19, the world has been grappling to rebuild the economy of the world, and countries are doing just that. And people who were mostly affected are your poor, but also the middle class. The last issue that is very important, it is issue of identity and race. Who is an American? When you say America first, what do you mean? And you look at these candidates, when you look at Kamala Harris, she is trying to manage those kinds of debate. Donald Trump is clear where he stands, including issues related to religion. And therefore, you know that there will be people who really believe in these issues who will rally behind Donald Trump. On the other hand, you have women who are worried about their gains in terms of issues that are related to reproductive rights. And therefore, I think it is going to be a very tight race. It is a tight race. Anyone who is going to make pronouncement now, you risk a situation where you might get it completely wrong. And the sad thing with this is that we might be talking about it's a tight race, only to find that it's an open race and a particular person is going to take a lead very early. We don't know what's on the minds of the Americans. And when you speak to Americans, they are scared, very, very scared. And that's what's creating this confusion and people taking a more neutral stand to say that it is a very tight race. But we may be in for a huge surprise. One candidate winning with a proper margin, the other losing with a terrible margin, or a tight race, as many people are predicting. But I just get a feeling that the polls might get it wrong.
And they've gotten it wrong before. It happened in 2016, where Donald Trump surprised many by winning, and in 2020, when Joe Biden won by a smaller margin than they thought he would. So if we get it wrong again this year, it certainly wouldn't be a surprise. There's already all kinds of speculation about how long we'll have to wait. And, if you listen to Donald Trump, he's already gestured at, the Democrats trying to steal the election, and that's why it might take some time before it's finally announced. Typically speaking, what happens after today when the final vote has been cast?
Well, I think the concept tight race phrase is creating a problem in terms of prediction. When can we get a sense of where this thing is going? Because if it is a tight race, there will be argument about even one vote. And therefore, Donald Trump, typical Donald Trump and his supporters, it is not going to be easy. And therefore, that's the fear, that the announcement of results at different states might be derailed by questioning of the results by certain groups or people, both sides, or mainly Donald Trump supporters. That is why there's fear that it's not going to be as easy as all that. Others are saying, we don't know. It might be even easier this time around. And therefore, you just prepare and wait for both eventualities, taking long or quicker. And therefore, I think that's what many broadcasters right now are doing to prepare for the coverage. You can't really predict what's going to happen, but there's a possibility of delay because of people constantly saying it's a tight race. When it is a tight race, a person would question every figure that's being presented.
Absolutely. Speaking about questioning the outcome of the result, let's step away from America for just a while. Something tells me we'll be speaking about that country for much of the week ahead. Much closer to home, of course, there has been a lot of the questioning of election results, and that's all unfolding in Mozambique. Real concerns, once again, about how that's morphing into violence, spilling over into the streets of that country, and whether or not government has a hold over that.
The problem is the border post for us. Now you have a situation where there's no movement of goods and services, including people. Last night we saw the trucks blocking the road on Mozambique side. And therefore that speaks to, that will affect the trade between South Africa and Mozambique, and not only South Africa and Mozambique, because when you look at the route, you'll find that some of those trucks are going as far as Kenya. And therefore, the southern region, the economy will be affected, but also other regions, because they get supply mostly from South Africa, but also the harbor in South Africa. And therefore, that's a serious problem there. We know that the Frelimo leader, Daniel Chopo, hasn't said any word. We don't know when is the inauguration. On the other hand, Vene, the leader of Vene Mondlane, the leader of the opposition, is currently abroad in Europe, but we don't know the country. And therefore, it is a very difficult one. This morning, there was sporadic violence, but relatively better than perhaps 2-3 days ago. But I think this is not sustainable. And as I pointed out yesterday, the problem is Cabo Delgado. If you have these kinds of focus on other areas in terms of security, you are likely going to drop the ball in Cabo Delgado, and the insurgents are watching.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard former President Thabo Mbeki calling for cool heads, but I haven't actually come across any kind of formal word from Mozambique's neighbors, even from SADC itself, who, of course, should be watching and should be sounding those warning bells if, in fact, the situation is to be brought under control.
Let's hope there's a concept of quiet diplomacy, and that's exactly what they are doing behind the scenes to try and find a solution. But I saw the statement from the chairperson of the organ on politics, defense and security in the region, the president of Tanzania, President Suluhu Hassan, calling for calm, but we don't know what they are doing. And for her, it's quite critical, because the Cabo Delgado region is a region where you have a border between Mozambique and Tanzania. In fact, the communities on both sides are relatives and friends, and they often interact, and there's a challenge of security there. And I think that will be very problematic to Tanzania, not only as South Africa. But secondly, we haven't had much from the chairperson of the SADC. You know that the current chair is President Emmerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe. The last time I had it was when he was congratulating Frelimo party after he made that announcement even before the Electoral Commission, and later again made another statement after the announcements of those results. And I think for South Africa, I haven't had much, and I think behind the scenes, there is no way the president wouldn't check with our diplomat or representative in Mozambique, because as I pointed out, there was a program that was introduced during Mbeki's tenure, the Maputo corridor. That corridor is still well and alive, and that's the corridor that I'm talking about in terms of movement of goods and services. And if you disrupt the Maputo corridor, you are not only disrupting business in terms of South Africa and supplies to neighboring countries, but also almost to the entire continent. As I pointed out, some of the goods at the harbor in Durban, they are being transported via these trucks up to East Africa and sometimes in Central Africa.
Sure. A very different picture, of course, unfolding in Botswana. It's amazing how much can happen in mere days, from the results being announced to Duma Boko being sworn in or inaugurated. I'm not sure, you'll correct me which one it is. And to MPs now set to take their oaths within a matter of days.
He was sworn in on Friday,
right.
And he's in office. He moved yesterday. There was that transition and the handing over by the former President Masisi. I think he's now preparing and thinking and meeting people. He met the security sector and also other important people. And what he has done also, he has appointed 5 MPs. Just like South Africa, where the president has a prerogative to appoint certain people in cabinet, with Botswana, the president can appoint 5 people as special elected MPs. So he has appointed 4 people who lost the constituencies, and these were the people or candidates who were contesting under the umbrella of the UDC. But also went further to appoint 1 MP that is a member of the party of Ian Khama, BPF, and therefore bringing in those who are sympathetic to former President Ian Khama. Fortunately, I'll be speaking to Ian Khama at 2 o'clock, recording that interview just to get his reaction, because he has announced that he's now taking leave or pulling out of politics. He's going to focus on his role as a chief. So I think another indication that he really wants to reach out to other parties as well in Botswana. We're told that the other party didn't want to take seats and they are not willing to get into cabinet. They want to be in the opposition benches. And I think he's trying to unite Botswana. And therefore, tomorrow, it will be a swearing in of these 5 MPs, the specially appointed or elected MPs, and of course, the other MPs who have won their constituencies. That will be part of the preparations for Friday, where there is going to be an official inauguration, just to take the nation on board, because most of the issues have been concluded. I think it's that time where you want Botswana to come and celebrate and give them a chance to be part of this process. We don't know how many heads of state and government will be able to attend the Friday inauguration, but I suspect mainly will be your SADC leaders, because it is a short notice. I don't have confirmation yet whether the president of South Africa will be there, or because of the program, he is not going to be there. But judging from the spokesperson of DERCO, that is Clayson Monyela, when he was trying to clarify the relationship between South Africa and Botswana, there's this outstanding issue of certain goods that cannot be found in the markets in Botswana because of those decisions taken by the previous government to ban those goods, and therefore the products, and therefore saying that it might be easier this time to negotiate with the current administration to ensure that those products are again available in Botswana. And guess what? The potato, the main issue here. And I think perhaps the president would want to go so that he can have a 2-minute just whispering in the ears of the new president that, please, let's resolve this issue, because not only are the business people and agricultural people in South Africa suffering, but also ordinary Botswana, because, South Africa is the important country in terms of supplies in the region.
Right, absolutely. Well, I mean, our own president had an inauguration at very short notice, and we had a number of heads of states. So I suppose...
But Botswana was not there. The president of Botswana didn't attend because of that, Okay.
Okay. I'm hoping that as they turn a new leaf in their democracy, we'll be able to, I suppose, iron out some of those issues, especially, as you mentioned, on a very serious note, how far-reaching some of those tensions can be for ordinary people in both countries. Sophie Mokoena, always a pleasure. Thanks for helping us connect the dots, as it were. Sophie Mokoena is our international desk editor here at SABC News.